When folks out there hear of a $500 billion farm bill, there's the general thought that $500 billion is going to farmers. Now, we all know that's not true. Any of us in agriculture know that $390 billion of that farm bill is going towards SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, food stamps. Most of the farm bill goes to help urban consumers. And we have to make sure that case is heard. We have to make sure that people know what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, why you guys are out there every day helping improve efficiency on the farm, helping reduce waste. We have to let people know that we're not just throwing inputs all over the place. A lot of times people get the opinion that farmers just go out there and we just spray as much crop nutrients as we can. We're just dumping them all over the place to boost yields, and you all know that's not true. Precision ag has done major things, wonderful things to help efficiency. And we have to make sure that point gets heard in 2013 more than ever. The impact on the industry, like I talked about, that's what we saw. It's going to create that urban versus rural population divide. We have to find ways to bridge that. Keep that in mind. That's what I'm asking in February of 2013. Keep those urban consumers in mind, because they are going to dictate policy. We can't get ahead of ourselves, though, in 2013. A lot of times, those of us in agriculture, those of us in any industry, myself included, have a tendency, when we start to think about a problem or an opportunity, to get a tunnel vision. We start to think, what relates to my field? What relates to what I'm doing here? And we see the world shrinks. The world shrinks to fit what it is we're doing. For me, it's agriculture. I get up and I start to think, what's going on in the ag world? I get on my phone, I check AgWeb and Farm Progress and my little apps, and I'm just putzing around. We have to remember, now more than anything, with our dwindling representation politically, to look at the big picture, to always be aware of what's going on in our surroundings, to make sure our loaders are up before we start driving. Because we don't want to be the one filing that insurance claim. That would be an awkward conversation with the agent. So, keep your eye on the big picture. As we look to commodities, we've seen a lot happen in 2012. Obviously, that was the weather market. That's what we were working with in 2012. There was a weather premium applied to commodities almost across the board, particularly to corn and soybeans. Now, that weather premium, if you're looking out there at December futures, that weather premium is almost all gone. The market isn't willing to bet on a drought yet in 2013. Prices are staying low. Corn acreage is staying high, so there's no need to go out and buy acres. And so that's where things stand right now. Looking at why corn has climbed so much in the past 10 years, it's a very simple answer, and a lot of you in this room know and understand that answer and appreciate that answer, and that answer is ethanol. We found another use out of nowhere. We created a demand for a third of the U.S. corn crop out of thin air in about 10 years. We found something to soak up all those extra bushels that American farmers, with help from you folks in the crop nutrient world, have been producing. We've seen climbing yields. We've seen climbing acres planted. We had to do something with that corn, and we did. So now farmers are farming for the market again, and it's paying off. And it's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. I have the chance sometimes to go and talk to different groups. I talk to a lot of cattlemen, and there's divided opinion on ethanol in a lot of the livestock community. But the benefits that ethanol has created for corn and soybean producers and for the rural economy really can't be understated. You drive into small towns and you see more new vehicles on the road than in some of the big cities. Most of them are trucks, but they're still new vehicles. Agriculture has been the bright spot in the U.S. economy for 5 years. Why? Let's take a look at that chart. Looking at the year 2008, 2009, we go back 5 years, and if we go back to 2007, we've seen ethanol production skyrocket. Ethanol is what is keeping us afloat in agriculture. And like I say, as a cattleman myself, big time cowboy on our ranch, it's hard to pay for feed. It's hard to write that check. But the benefits that we get far outweigh the additional costs in the per bushel price of corn. So that's something, whenever you're out there, this is one of those urban versus rural conversations that we're going to have in 2013 and we're going to have in the future. When you're talking to people who hear ethanol's just government payday to the farmer, ethanol, they're just legislating that we put corn in our cars instead of feeding our people, we have to be able to convincingly make the case that ethanol is good, not just for agriculture, but good for the country. And it is. And I think history is going to bear that out. But in the meantime, we have to make the case to the consumer. We have to stop the food versus fuel argument. And I'm guilty of carrying it forward. It's insidious, and we have to find ways to change the conversation on ethanol. And I think that's changing. Now that there's no more subsidy, I think we're going to see attitudes begin to shift on ethanol. But we have to keep pushing. Looking now at prices and where they're going, we're still in an inverted market situation. The market still needs that corn now. So producers that maybe stuck a little bit aside last year, maybe they just didn't feel like getting $8 a bushel for corn, now they can still get $7, which is not bad. That's kind of farm history. We're always just waiting for those prices to get a little bit higher. But the moral of the story is, for guys that did stick some in their bins, the outlook's still very good on old crop corn. We've still got a tremendous amount of demand. The demand is letting up. A lot of the market has now started to shift. We're going to see what's coming up out of South America. A lot of uncertainty on the corn crop down there. So that's kind of where things are trending in corn. Eventually, we're going to see the old crop contracts fall off even more, and we'll get back to a regular market situation where we see the new crop begin to have a premium over the old. Looking at new crop, December corn, it's been a rough couple of months for guys trying to price out that December corn. We saw that big drop in December. We saw this across the board in all the commodities, corn, soybeans, everything. And this was as those funds pulled out of the market. We had all that uncertainty about the fiscal cliff. Oh, and the fiscal cliff, fiscal cliff, fiscal cliff. I'm so sick of saying fiscal cliff. I'd have to say it 3 or 4 times every weekend on Market to Market. And I'm happy we're past it. Now I think the concern is going to be debt ceiling. We get sick of saying debt ceiling here before too long. But that's what's going on. So the funds pulled out. We saw the market soften. And then we had a little bit throughout the month of January treading water, see where things are going. And now that we've got large number of acres being planted to corn, we've got the potential for better rainfall in 13. The market is taking that premium out of corn. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it drop down there to that 560 range. This summer, new crop corn prices are going to be driven by moisture. We're going to see that, I believe, throughout the summer. Anytime there's rain in the forecast for a substantial part of the corn belt, the market's going to take more of that premium away from the new crop corn. So keep an eye on that for your customers. If they're curious about where corn prices are going to go, they're going to fall in front of rain events. We're going to see it all summer long, I do believe, unless something crazy happens and we get a complete incident from around the world somewhere that's going to really throw everything off. If things continue the way they have been, it's going to be weather driving corn prices in 2013. There are 2 scenarios that could play out with that in mind. There's the Informa numbers predicting just over 99 million acres planted to corn, all-time record, with adequate moisture. We're looking at a huge carryout of corn if that happens, if that's the situation that occurs. And then we might be looking down there, analysts are saying in that $4.50 range, $4.50 to $5 range for new crop corn if that's the case. The other side, USDA put out their numbers. Looking at their numbers, they've got us at 96 million acres, down a little bit from 12. We get that, adequate moisture, we'll probably see corn, nothing else changing, we'll probably see corn in that 550 range. If we do get into another drought year, another severe drought, another 2012 and 2013, really the sky's the limit on corn prices. We've destroyed some demand throughout 2012 with these prices. We've destroyed some international demand. We've seen that in the low exports. Low export numbers are going to continue. International users are finding substitutes for U.S. corn. We have not destroyed much demand in the livestock world. Cattle numbers are down. Hog numbers are right where they were in 2011, 2012. So there is still a decent amount of demand out there for corn. And so when we get another dry year, folks are going to be paying out the nose to get corn. So that's what's to keep in mind. That's where we have an incredible range of prices this year. So for your customers, it's more important than ever to know where they can make a profit and to market wisely. And to that extent, I'm sure they're working with people they can trust, and hopefully we can kind of keep them pointed in the right direction, have another great year for agriculture on the corn side. Looking now to soybeans. There we go, volatile year. The cure for high prices, folks, is high prices. That's something we in agriculture have understood for a long time. When we see a neighbor getting $8 a bushel for corn, well, by God, all of my land's going into corn next year. I want $8 a bushel. We've seen it throughout history, and we're seeing it happen now. And now the world is so much more connected. Our neighbor isn't the guy down the road. Our neighbor is Brazil. Our neighbor is South America. Our neighbor is increasingly Southeast Asia. And we're going to see the global situation on corn and soybeans come back to an equilibrium. Eventually, we are going to get back to that natural state in agriculture, price-wise, where it's supply-driven rather than demand-driven. And that's going to be a shift back from what we've had for the past 10 years, where it has just been demand pulling prices continuously higher. We are probably going to plateau for some time until we create another ethanol, or until ethanol begins to consume more, biodiesel begins to spread. Whatever it is, until we create another demand source to consume all of these bushels the world is going to be producing. And I think that's coming down the line. Nothing we have to fear in 2013, I don't think. Looking over to soybeans, again, we've had that nice run-up over the past 10 years in soybean prices. It's encouraged more and more people to plant beans. We're tearing up pasture ground across the country, and we're planting it to row crops. And we're seeing it in corn, we're seeing it in beans. Looking at old crop beans, what's been driving this market has been exports, particularly exports to China. They are hungry for soybeans. They are starving for soybeans and soybean meal. Their people love hogs, and those hogs love soy meal, and they can't produce enough of it in country. Now the news from China this year, they're buying, and then canceling. And then buying, and canceling. And so we've had a lot of volatility, and that's probably going to continue. They're the biggest fish in the sea in terms of export markets. We give them a pass to do that. We're not going to stop doing business with China because they cancel orders at high prices and rebook them at lower. The news now, the market is waiting to see what's coming out of South America. We've heard talk of a record crop. Now we've got weather causing some trouble down, especially as it relates to harvest. So the market's uncertain. But this week, or last week I should say, we had disappointing export news. We've seen those exports. We started seeing those exports taper off. Is it going to be a long-term taper? I mean, are we going to be dwindling? Is China now shipping most of its business to Brazil and Argentina? Possibly. We've got 1 week in. It's too early to call it a trend. But we did see a drop in those exports, and that translated into a drop in price last week. Now over on the new crop situation, we again saw that big steep drop in prices last week, but the market is still waiting on weather. Just like corn, it's going to be volatile this year. It's going to be weather driven. We're still getting a nice premium on beans. The situation for beans by and large is very bullish. There's enough world demand that things look good even with a bumper crop. So we're still seeing a nice little price there on soybeans. That's probably going to continue throughout the year. And then obviously again, sky's the limit if we get into another drought. As we look to what's going on with the old crop and then to the new, the big crop out of South America, that's keeping a lid on old crop prices. Again, those exports might be tapering off. The acreage estimate from the USDA for soybeans is 76 million. Pretty comparable to last year, down a little bit. We'll see what shakes out in actual acres planted. A lot of the folks I've talked to report corn seed sales off the charts. So is this number going to hold up? We'll see. How much land is going to be planted to corn versus beans? We'll see. Corn is still the more profitable plant to plant in 2013 as predicted. Looking at livestock and meat, this is just for your information. Stick this in your back pocket and have something to talk to the guys at the meat counter about. Production dropped a little bit in meat in 2013, in beef. Production is expected to decline substantially in 2013. Well, that's creating the concern that beef prices really might go through the roof. We really are going to be testing consumers' willingness to buy beef as a protein. There was an article from the Des Moines Register just yesterday or 2 days ago asking, will beef become a luxury food? Will the average American no longer be able to buy and consume beef because the prices will be too high? That's a very real threat. It's a very real concern in the beef industry. And a lot of it is going to depend on how the harvest goes this year, where feed prices go, and how quickly we can build back up that herd. It's the cow herd really, if this drought continues, we are going to be working with fewer and fewer and fewer animals in the beef industry. We were pushing records last year during the drought. This year we are probably going to push and surpass them in beef. The good news is internationally, that export market is a huge market for the meat industry, and Japan is now allowing the import of beef animals under 30 months as opposed to 20 months. So hopefully that's going to create another revenue stream for packers who have just been bleeding red since last summer. Hopefully we'll see things turn around. On the pork side and the poultry side, they've played very, very well. They've handled this last summer very shrewdly. We saw pork producers hold prices low as beef prices tested record highs, and we saw last year more people in America consuming pork than we had in the past 35 years. Pork found a whole new demand base. Now they're prepared for this year. We can start to increase those prices, still keep pork at a discount to beef so folks can get their protein at a little bit better price, but we'll begin to see more income for pork packers. That's something to keep an eye on. Just when you're there at the meat shop, meat counter, keep that in mind. You're going to get a little sticker shock when you go to buy some ribeyes for 4th of July.